these certificates will be issued. Please consider these instructions carefully and take note of them. Honorable key speaker of today's session, Dr. K.V. Pauli sir, respected teachers, beloved students, and all participants who have joined us today for the program from different areas. A very warm afternoon to all of you. A hearty welcome to the national webinar organized by the Postgraduate and Research Department of Psychology at Prajyoti Niketan College in connection with International Women's Day on the topic of estrogen and overview. The development of a genetically female fetus with 44 plus XX genetic constitution into a fully grown woman is a very complex process. As we observe International Women's Day, it is essential that we remain aware of the significant role played by estrogen in this unique development. And this webinar will be an answer to that question. And there's no better person to enlighten us on this topic other than Dr. K.V. Pauli sir, who is the Vice Principal of St. Teresa's Arts and Science College, Mala, and he was also the former Associate Professor of Physiology at Prajyoti Niketan College. This webinar is being held as an honorable tribute dedicated to Dr. K.V. Pauli sir for all the valuable contributions he has made in the field of physiology during his spirit at Prajyoti Niketan College. Before starting off today's program, I'll just be saying the program schedule. We begin with a prayer, be having a welcoming address followed by felicitation. Then we have the keynote speakers session. And after that, we'll be having an interactive session where all the questions will be cleared. In the end, we'll have a vote of thanks and the program will be coming to an end. So before starting off the programs, it's essential that we seek the blessings of God Almighty. In order to guide us in prayer, I invite Aparna Ravindran of 2nd BSc Psychology.
Hanna, clear ano?
It's clear.
Nanmayagunna Kanti Kanuvan Kanninageename Nallavakinte Sheelu Cholluvan Navinageename സ്നേഹമാകുന്ന ഗീതമോ എന്റെ കാതിനിളയാകണേ സത്യമെന്നുള്ള ശീലമോടെ ഞാൻ ശാന്തി അറിയണമേ അമ്മയെന്നറിയുവാനുള്ള ബോധമുണ്ടാക്കണേ ജീവജാലങ്ങളാകെയും ജന്മബന്ധുവായിടണേ ജാതിഭേദങ്ങളെന്ന ശാപമോ ദൂരെ മറയണമേ ലോകമെന്ന പാഠമുൻ എന്റെ മനസ്സിൽ നിറയണമേ
Thank you, Aparna. Pauli sir, could you please mute your microphone? We have an echo disturbance. Thank you. Now I invite Dr. Milu Maria Anto, the head of the Department of Psychology, to offer her warm welcome to all the participants who have gathered here.
Thank you, Hannah. Good afternoon, all. Respected Manager, Reverend Dr. Prajyoti, respected Principal, respected Resource Person, Dr. K.V. Pauli, IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Simi Burgess, Organizing Secretary, Ms. Midhu Johnson, delegates from various fields, my dear colleagues and dear students. In connection with International Women's Day observance, Association with Psychology Department is organizing a national webinar on the topic estrogen and overview. This topic is really relevant in the special context as to get an insight about the role of estrogen, known as female hormone, in various physiological and behavioral aspects. On this special occasion, I welcome Reverend Dr. Harshajan Parayatil and Principal Dr. Shaijan Paul in their absence. Both of them always supported students and teachers unconditionally in order to achieve their academic excellence. I also welcome dynamic and energetic IQAC coordinator, Dr. Simi Verghese, for motivating us to be on the move with various activities. Our eminent resource person, Dr. K.V. Pauli, who was part of Prajyoti Niketan family, who retired in the year 2017 as an associate professor of physiology, currently part of St. Teresa's College, Mala, where he handles the position of vice principal. Proud to say that he was one of my favorite teacher, who is well known for his perfectionism, dedication, and hard work, and his language abilities. The time spent for preparation of everyday classes actually is worth mentioning. So I'm sure that the session will be a fruitful one for each and everyone. I'm honored and I wholeheartedly welcome my dearest teacher to this webinar. Organizing Secretary Nidhu K. Johnson took charge of Physiology Department after the retirement of Dr. K.V. Pauli. Her perseverance and dedication in her teaching profession made her one of the favorite teachers of students. I welcome Ms. Midhu and thank her tireless effort to make this event a fruitful one. I also thank teachers from Psychology Department, Dr. Nice Mary, Dr. Saumya, Dr. Suganya, and Dr. Jaya, who worked hand in hand and provided mental and psychological support to this event. I welcome all of them to this gathering. All the delegates from various institutes made our day by cooperating with this event. On behalf of Prajyoti Niketan College, I welcome all the delegates. Last but not least, I welcome all the teaching and non-teaching faculties of Prajyoti Niketan College and all the students to this occasion. Wish you all an enlightened.
Thank you, ma'am, for your sincere words. Now I request Dr. Simi Verghese, the IQAC coordinator of Prajyoti Niketan College, to convey her felicitation, greetings, and wishes on this occasion.
Respected founder, manager, and director, Reverend Dr. Father Harshajan Parayatil, Principal Dr. Shaijan Paul, Vice Principal Dr. Sonia Sunny, Keynote Speaker of the Day, Dr. K.V. Pauli, Vice Principal, St. Teresa's Arts and Science College, Mala, and former Professor in Physiology, Prajyoti Niketan College, Dr. Milu Maria Anto, Head Department of Psychology, Ms. Midhu K. Johnson, Organizing Secretary, loving members of the teaching and non-teaching departments of Prajyoti, dear teacher, student participants. Good afternoon, everybody. At the very outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. Milu Maria Anto, Ms. Midhu K. Johnson, and the Department of Psychology for having selected Dr. K.V. Pauli as the keynote speaker, Estrogen and Overview, organized to commemorate the International Women's Day. I had been fortunate to witness the selfless and sincere efforts put forth by Dr. K.V. Pauli while he was the IQAC Joint Coordinator during the second cycle of NAC accreditation at Prajyoti Niketan College. His methodical and systematic planning, coupled with the holistic perspective of Dr. Dhanya Menon, had fetched for us an A grade from the NAC. A born teacher, a meticulous administrator, and a perfectionist to the core, Dr. K.V. Pauli had set quality benchmarks for Prajyoti while he was here. His unique and special style of teaching had fetched for him many admirers. Students had a special liking for Pauli sir and his way of handling the subject physiology. Thank you, Polly sir, for accepting our invitation. A word of appreciation to Dr. Milu Maria Anto and the Department of Psychology for organizing this webinar exceptionally well. I would like to specially congratulate Ms. Mithu K. Johnson, the young and vibrant organizing secretary, who had toiled very hard towards making this webinar a grand success. Ms. Mithu is a person with unique ideas, gentle manners, and greater perspective on life, I should say. Let this webinar energize all participants to complement each other and make this world a better place to live in. Commemorating the International Women's Day, I exhort all young friends, both men and women, to unleash your hidden potential and to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your heartfelt words. Now I shall take the opportunity to introduce to all of you our speaker for the session, Dr. K.V. Pauly, sir. Dr. K.V. Pauly, sir, has been a part of our college from the very first day. For the first 20 chapters of our college, he has been witnessing the changes in the Prajyoti Niketan. His valuable experience has been an asset to our college and the Department of Psychology. Dr. K.V. Pauly, sir, is well known for his very amiable approach towards students. He is the one who instilled a very strong foundation in neurophysiology in the minds of psychology students, and that enabled them to better understand the science of human mind and behavior. He has met and interacted with diverse group of students from diverse areas of discipline, and he has contributed to the area of research through numerous paper publications and presentations. I'm quite sure that all of us would benefit from this session, and I'm very pleased to offer a very hearty welcome to Dr. K.V. Pauly, sir, for the session. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Hannah. A very good afternoon to one and all. Hannah Grace, as well as Milu Maria at the Department of Psychology for the nice words about me, and also for giving me an opportunity to meet all of you, other than the faculty. After a long time, it's nice meeting you all. And let me take this opportunity to thank our Reverend Manager, Dr. Prajyoti, and our Principal, Dr. Shaijan Paul, in their absence, for giving me an opportunity and inviting me for this webinar. The faculty, for the Department of Psychology, most of them are almost all of them are my students. And I'm quite happy to interact with all of them. And I hope that there is something for, those who are going to spend the next maybe 1 hour with me. There should be some positive takeaways. I hope you have it. Okay, by the way, I forgot to thank Dr. Sibi Verghese for the nice words about me and remembering the days when we worked for the NAC accreditation. It all seems to be quite far off now. Anyway, let's begin our session without wasting much time. Once more, I thank the faculty of Prajyoti Niketan for inviting and giving me this opportunity, especially the Department of Psychology. So let's begin. Before entering into the topic, I feel it will be appropriate to have a quick look at the endocrine system. Simply put, the endocrine system, as we all know, is a network of glands that produce, stores, called signals that coordinate and regulate the range of bodily functions. But I will remind you people to remind that you should not confuse it with the exocrine glands, such as the sweat glands or the salivary glands, for example, which secrete their products, but release their secretions at the site of action via ducts. Endocrine glands do not have any glands and instead utilize or transport the hormones using the bloodstream. Now, in the meantime, I would like to, if possible, share certain slides with you. Can you, Nilu or Mitu, can you respond whether you can see this?
Yes, sir. It's visible.
It's visible. So this slide gives you an idea about the different endocrine glands. We'll come to that in a few minutes. So, as I said, the endocrine system basically helps our system, the body, to control growth and development, homeostasis, which in other words is the internal maintenance of internal balance of body systems, to maintain metabolism, reproduction, and in our response to stimuli, mainly stress or to injury. As shown here, as you can see on the screen, the major endocrine glands are the hypothalamus, pituitary, both of which are also neuroendocrine glands that function actually to link together the functions of the endocrine system and the nervous system. Then there is the pineal body. So the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the pineal are all located in the brain. Then comes the thyroid and the parathyroid in the neck region. Then comes the thymus, which is in the thoracic region. Then we have the adrenal glands above the kidneys. You have the pancreas in the abdominal cavity between the stomach and the intestine. Then you have ovaries, also in the abdominal cavity. And in males, the testis, which is found outside the body cavity in the scrotum. These glands produce different types of hormones, as we all know, which evoke a specific response in other cells, which we call as the target cells, or maybe target tissues or organs. So like the nervous system, the endocrine system is also our body's main communicators, or along with the nervous system, they are the communicators. But instead of using nerves or nerve impulses to transmit these impulses or informations, the endocrine system uses blood vessels. Blood vessels, as I have shown here, to transport the product, that is the hormone. So here we can see that the secreting cells, which we call as the endocrine glands, secrete the products which move to the body, to the interstitial spaces, from where it moves to the bloodstream. So they make use of the bloodstream to carry the product to different parts of the body. Now, one thing that you should keep in mind is that most of you must be aware of all these things. Anyway, that the function of a group of hormones to which estrogen belongs is dependent upon the receptors that are found on the target cells. So if the target cell do not have an appropriate receptor site, then it is not effective. Those cells do not respond to these hormones. So here we have shown the target cell with the specific receptive receptor. The endocrine system, we should also keep in mind, is that it is slower to initiate, but has a more prolonged response when compared to the nervous system. But to ensure that this system, which is both regulatory and which controls our activities, there are other accessory processes that must also work properly. So one thing is that the endocrine glands must release the correct amount of hormones. Too much or too little causes what we all know is known as the hormone imbalance. We also need to have a good blood supply, because while 50% of these hormones travel free, many of them are bound to certain proteins that are present in the blood, and it is in a combined form that they are being transported. Receptors in the target tissue. The targets must be able to respond appropriately to the hormonal signals. If any of these above-mentioned processes doesn't work as it should, it can lead to endocrine diseases, which are quite common. Now let us have a quick look at the types of hormones and the mode of action. Broadly, hormones can be categorized according to the chemical composition and mechanism of action into steroid hormones, to which estrogens belong. Then you have the peptide hormones and the amino acid derivatives. Coming to the peptide hormones, as shown on the screen, you can see that the receptors, as mentioned earlier, is present on the plasma membrane. So these hormones, these guys do not directly enter into the cell. Instead, they bind receptors which are present on the surface of the cell, lipophobic, meaning fat-hating, so that they cannot freely move across the plasma membrane. So they bind to certain receptors which are found on the surface of the plasma membrane. They bind to the receptors on the surface of the cells, which are typically coupled to internally anchored proteins, which go by the name G proteins. Then it is this receptor complex, as you can see in this diagram, that moves into the cell. Just a minute, I think I'm showing the wrong slide. Okay, we have the correct slide now. So these G proteins detach from these coupled proteins and move into the cell, into the cytoplasm, and then they move into the nucleus and bind to the DNA and carry out transcription and produce the necessary proteins. But unlike these peptide hormones, the ones like estrogen hormones, the ones like estrogen, which are steroid hormones, they are fat loving, or what is known as a lipophilic, meaning they can freely diffuse across the plasma membrane. So the hormones directly enter into the cytoplasm across the plasma membrane. Then there are the steroid receptors. They bind with the steroid receptors to form hormone receptor complex. Then they move directly into the nucleus, where this activated complex binds directly to the DNA, as you can see, acting as a transcription factor for gene expression. So, examples other than estrogen for these steroid hormones are progesterone and testosterone. Then the third class of hormones are amine hormones. These are derived from the amino acid tyrosine and included are the lights of adrenaline, thyroxine, and triiodothyronine. The peculiarity of these amine hormones is that they don't share identical properties and have properties common to both what we have seen, both the peptides as well as the steroid hormones. Now let us come to estrogens. Though we refer commonly to these as estrogen, they are a group of hormones that can be called as the sex hormones, which play an important role in the normal sexual and reproductive development in women. While estrogens are present in both men, here maybe there are a few who consider estrogens purely as a female sex hormone. No, it is not like that. Estrogens are present in both men and women, but of course, in men it is in lower levels or significantly higher. Women, especially of reproductive age. In women, they promote the development of what is known as the secondary sexual characteristics. They are involved in almost all aspects of regulating the menstrual cycle. Estrogen, especially estradiol, affects the reproductive tract, the urinary tract, even some of our vital organs like the heart. These receptors which I mentioned, receptors are found in blood vessels, skin, mucous membranes, and many organ systems, including the musculoskeletal and cardiovascular systems, and even the brain are affected by estrogen. Coming to males, estrogen regulates certain functions of the reproductive system important to the maturation of the sperm. Maybe it is also quoted as necessary for healthy libido. But though the quantities that circulate in the male bodies are comparatively lesser, they nevertheless have important physiological roles in it. We'll come to that towards the end of our session. Okay. Now, from a historical perspective, we should know that it was almost a century, that it was in early 20s since the first estrogen, estrone, which is otherwise known as E1, was discovered. Then estriol, which is known as E2 or estradiol, E3, were discovered in 1930 and 33 respectively. And then after some time in 1965, estetrol, or otherwise known as E4, was discovered. These four are commonly collected as estrogens, or specifically as endogenous estrogens. And coming to the word estrogen, of course, it could have been from Latin or Greek, but I prefer to consider it as from Greek words, mainly the word estrus, which is meant to denote a periodic state of sexual activity in female mammals, and must have been figuratively denoted to refer to sexual passion or desire. and the suffix gen meaning producer. So it makes sense. Something that is responsible for or produces sexual passion or desire in animals, including human beings, is referred to as estrogen. Over the years, American English adapted the spelling of estrogen to fit to its phonetic pronunciation. Nevertheless, ESTROGEN as well as OESTROGEN are used nowadays. And after the discovery, estrogens, by then artificial or what you call as synthetic varieties were also formed, and both natural and synthetic ones were used for medical purposes. Also, what we should remember is that all vertebrates synthesize estrogens, even some insects. This suggests that estrogenic sex hormones have an ancient evolutionary history. So we should know that there are so many organisms that synthesize estrogens. Then we'll come to the main sites of production of estrogens. In females, the main site of production of estrogens are the ovaries. And during pregnancy, the placenta also produces some amount of estrogens. Additional small amounts are secreted by the adrenal glands, and of course in males by the testes. And another factor that we should know about the site of production is that the adipose tissue, which we call as the fat deposits in our body, also has the ability to produce estrogen. The brain and the bone also produce some amount of estrogen. Coming to the females again, I've shown a section of the ovary, female ovary, and it is believed that you can see some maturing eggs, ovum, surrounded by, in the follicle, surrounded by the follicular cells. So it is believed that the egg follicle, this sac-like structure that holds the immature egg, and the cells between these follicles, which you got levels in the bloodstream, seem to be highest during the egg releasing period. Here we see the egg releasing time. Just before that, there is a peak estrogen that is found in the bloodstream. And then there is a second surge or an elevated condition releases these empty cells. Once the egg is released, you got it, these follicles are empty. They then get transformed into what is known as the corpus luteum, as shown here in yellow color. Now, regarding the control of estrogen production, it is quite tightly and systemically controlled through the hypothalamic, pituitary, ovarian hormone feedback regulation axis, as is shown here. It is not all that confusing as the name goes. The hypothalamic, pituitary, ovarian hormone feedback regulation axis. It's nothing but the hypothalamus recognizing the amount of estrogen in circulation, releases the hormones necessary to tell the anterior pituitary to release the tropic hormones, which are the lutein stimulating hormone. They are recognized by the ovaries, and which start producing these hormones. And as and when the amount goes up, it again is recognized by the hypothalamus, stopping the production in a similar manner, transmitting the instruction. So But this is very tightly, or what you call as systemically controlled by this axis and the feedback system. Serum levels of estrogen. Serum level means the amount of estrogen that is found in blood minus its formed elements is a serum. Or the serum levels of estrogen are first sensed and controlled by neurons in the hypothalamus, as I said, wherein the estrogen receptors, which are found in the hypothalamus, are activated to trigger this feedback regulation whenever it is in excess or over their appropriate physiological required levels. Now, how they function is, as I said, the hypothalamus secretes gonadotropin releasing hormones to induce the production of gonadotropins, which are the LH and the FSH, from the anterior pituitary. The LH acts on the ovarian theca cells and granulosa cells, while FSH acts on specifically on granulosa cells to stimulate the biosynthesis of steroid hormones. These surges of serum estrogens have certain physiological threshold levels above which they inhibit estrogen biosynthesis through these estrogen receptor, especially the alpha estrogen receptors mediated suppression system. So that is the feedback system. That is how the feedback system functions. More in the blood supply, sends message to hypothalamus, is regulated. Less, the hypothalamus through pituitary gland tells gonads to produce more and more of it. So this regulatory system is tightly controlled. Any disturbance in this negative feedback regulatory pathway results in endocrine disorders. In this case, estrogen disorders. Now let us also see or try to understand that, because many of us don't realize that there is a role for male sex hormones, at least as an intermediary. Cholesterol. We all have heard about cholesterol and we all know about cholesterol. So cholesterol is the parent molecule from which all ovarian steroid hormones are formed. This is first converted to pregnenolone, which is converted to progesterone, and the steps in conversion of progesterone to the main estrogens, which are estradiol and the estrone, include the intermediate formation of androgens, which are actually male sex hormones. There are a few of them of which many of you might have heard about: androsten and testosterone. So, in short, androgens are the precursors, or male sex hormones are the precursors of estrogens, which are converted to estrogens through the action of an enzyme known as aromatase. The ovaries are rich in aromatase, hence these are quickly converted to estrogens. Some of aromatase is also present in the adipose tissue. That is what, when I said this, I mean, when we mentioned about the site of production of androgens, we also mentioned the adipose tissue or the fat tissue. It is because this aromatase is present in the fat tissue, and which is an important source of estrogen in postmenopausal women. Estradiol, which mostly is referred commonly to as estrogen, is the most potent estrogen and is synthesized from testosterone. Then estrone can be formed from this estradiol, but its main precursor is again the male sex hormone androstenedione. Then estriol is a weak androgen, is formed from earlier. Once secreted into the blood, these estrogens bind a protein known as the sex. Not all of these molecules, but some of, we can see that the estrogen level peaks before the days of, immediately you can see the peaking here to 1.5 nanomoles per liter, and then it drops. There is a simultaneous rise after ovulation of progesterone, which is required for the maintenance of the endometrium of the uterus or for the maintenance of pregnancy. It doesn't concern us now anyway. So what is important is the amount of estrogen, which is comparatively lower during the follicular phase and peaks just before ovulation and then comes down. Then there is a slight peaking again and then goes down steadily during the luteal phase. Brain neurons also produce E2 for, as I said earlier, for paracrine signaling in support of the sexual differentiation and reproductive behavior. Now, if pregnancy occurs or during pregnancy, or estriol or E3, which is the least physiologically important, E2 also rises to about 44 nanomoles and E3 to about 50. Thus, the estrogen level, the site of synthesis, and the systemic release for endocrine greatly before and after during pregnancy. We have seen these alpha and beta mediate estrogen effects mainly as estrogen dependent transcriptional regulators. These receptors, so the realization of this, or what I'm going to tell you now, will actually answer a number of questions regarding the effect of estrogen during menopause, during the reproductive years of the female individual. If we realize that the effect of any hormone is dependent on its receptor molecules on or in the target cell, it will be easier to understand. So these alpha and beta receptors show distinct. Both are expressed in the brain. While alpha dominates in the hypothalamus, and dominates in the hypothalamus, beta or has a role in memory, let us say. Active immune system cells express alpha as well as beta. Then alpha receptors expression is most relevant to our immune regulation. So these things should be kept in mind. Now, coming to specific effects on certain areas of interest is the female reproductive system. In females, estrogens, as I told you earlier, that estrogen affect the ovaries, the vagina, the fallopian tubules, the uterus. In the ovaries, they help to stimulate the growth of the follicles. Just now we saw the sac-like structure, or which enclose the developing egg. So once the egg is released, the egg travels through the fallopian tubules on its way to the uterus. In the fallopian tubules, estrogens are responsible for developing a thick muscular wall and also for the contractions that transport the egg as well as the sperm cells. Sperm cells have to travel from the vagina through the uterus, through the fallopian tubules, up where they are restricted by the current generated by the tubules, and then it could be the place where this fertilization takes. So, maintaining the fallopian tubules are quite, so estrogens also have a function of the uterus to develop the muscles, but also helps it in its contraction, which is very important for both slowing off of the walls of the endometrium in case there is no fertilization, but also after the growth of the fetus during childbirth or delivery of child, as well as the delivery of the placenta. So these contractions are necessary, and it is the estrogen which plays a role in it. As you may be aware, the cervix of the uterus or the tip of the uterus projects into the vagina and secretes mucus that enhances sperm transport. Estrogens are thought to regulate the flow and thickness of these mucus secretions. Then it plays a role in the growth of the vagina itself to its adult size. Plays a role in the thickening of the vaginal walls. The increase in or increase and maintenance of the vaginal acidity that helps to reduce the bacterial infections. I mean, these maintenance of these acidity, increased acidity is correlated to estrogen activities. If the young female uterus, if we can mention it like that, is deprived of estrogens, or if there is any deficiency during the growing years up to puberty or whereabouts, it is seen that the young female uterus does not develop into adult form. And also, those adult uterus that does not receive estrogens begins to show tissue degradation. So these facts point to the importance of the presence of estrogen in the right amounts in young female as well as adults. Coming to the breast, in the breast the actions of estrogens are complexly interrelated with those of other hormones, and the total significance is not yet easily defined. Anyway, they are attributed to play a role or has a role in the growth of breast during adolescence. It is also responsible for the pigmentation of the nipples and eventual cessation or stoppage of the flow of milk. Estrogens are also said to stimulate bone formation and the closure of bone epiphysis, which causes linear growth to cease at the end of puberty. It is also involved in the maintenance of bone, because I mentioned earlier, we see the receptors in bone, brain, all these areas. So it is involved in the maintenance of bone throughout the reproductive years. Actually, it does so by limiting the reabsorption and preserves bone strength. In the serum, and to increase serum, let us say the overall effect of the changes in the amount of estrogens that circulate, perhaps in conjugation with the direct effect of estrogens, also plays a role on its effects in maybe in conjugation or conjunction with other hormones on blood vessels. So during the productive years of an adult female, but in some way in conjugation with some other hormones, these estrogens protect the blood vessels from atherosclerosis before menopause or up to menopause. Then coming to the physical structure, estrogens influence the structural differences between males and female bodies. Usually we know that the female bones are smaller and shorter. The pelvis is broader. The shoulder, and also the female body is more curved or contoured because of the difference in the deposit of fatty tissue. Nice. distribution of balls in females, whereas the scalp hair is usually more permanent. The voice box is smaller and vocal cords shorter. So it is said that in all these, the estrogens do have a role to play. In addition, estrogens suppress the activity of sebaceous glands, or what is known as the oil producing, the likelihood of said to produce the likelihood of females. But immediately questions might arise that there are a lot of individuals with a lot of acne. So then, at least in experimental animals, loss of, or there are many publications which tells you that there are certain proofs to, or can be established that there is a when there is a reduction in estrogen, that there is a loss of mating desire or it may not be all that much pronounced in human beings. Now coming to males, traces of estrogens are present in the blood and urine. And it seems to be most evident in male during puberty as well as in old age. Their function in the male and their interplay with other male hormones are not clearly known. Or you cannot categorically say that this is because of estrogen or like that. Again, there is this action in union with other hormones. Then let us again come back to the females and the cognitive changes during the menopausal transition. Ovarian estrogen production begins to decline, as we all know, a few years before menopause, and levels of E2 decrease to very low levels from maybe about 2 years following cessation of ovarian function. The period between the onset in function to almost total cessation of ovarian estrogen production is known as the premenopause or the menopausal transition, and roughly encompasses the period of from 48 to 58 years of age. Because estrogen falls dramatically during the menopausal transition, things in memory also occur. And indeed, subjective memory complaints are frequent during the transition. But the thing is that several studies have failed to find to episodic memory performance during this transition. But some studies have concluded that any decline in memory that occurs during menopausal transition was quite transitory and not clinically important, because a study involving some 2,300 women have shown that the memory scores rebounded to premenopausal levels by the time they reached postmenopause. So it was only transitory. It would therefore seem that during the menopausal transition, decline in memory sometimes occur is only, maybe it coincided with declines in E2 levels, or maybe it is only transitory. Now, this conclusion gains some support from the findings that certain women have complaints which were randomly treated with either conjugated estrogen and then were found to have some effect. That is all in the performance of memory and other cognitive tests at post-treatment. Now, regarding frequently asked certain questions like thermoregulation, declining estrogen production of the ovaries underlines hot flashes or what is known as hot flushes. But again, here also no consistent correlation between actual plasma estrogen levels and severity of symptoms has been found. There are many situations that seem inconsistent with estrogen deficiency etiology, because in pre-pubertal girls, it has been shown, I mean, we all know that the circulating estrogen levels must be quite slow, but there have been incidences where they have experienced hot flushes. But the thing is that hot flushes do occur during the fertile age, when there is normal, so-called normal production of estrogen. Many women will pass through this stage without experiencing any hot flushes also. Hence, estrogen withdrawal alone does not explain for the cause of menopausal vasomotor symptoms, which is otherwise commonly known as VMS. Nevertheless, the substantial role of estrogen withdrawal symptoms in VMS is underlined by the fact that the hormone replacement